Hello? This is Wall Street, one of the most important financial centers in the world. Come, let's talk together about what money really is.
All the money you work for, save, and spend isn't actually real.
Yeah, at least. Not in the way you probably think it is. Now, this isn't some big conspiracy theory. It's actually something way more interesting, something that gets to the very heart of what gives a dollar or a euro its power.
Here's the thing. Money is basically just a story that we all collectively agree to believe in. It's nothing more than a shared agreement, a group deal we make every time we accept it for our work or use it to buy a coffee.
And if you dig down to the very center of this whole story, from the ancient world all the way to today, you'll find one single, all-important idea holding it all together. And that word is trust. To really get this, we've got to go way back to the beginning, to a time before money existed, when everything was about bartering. Because this is where we find the original problem that made us invent money in the first place.
You know, on the surface, bartering seems pretty simple, right? I'll trade you this for that. But it has one giant fatal flaw, and it's got this fancy name, the double coincidence of wants.
Okay, that sounds complicated, but it's actually super simple. It just means it's not enough for me to want your fish. For a trade to work, you also have to want my bread at the exact same time. If you're not in the mood for bread, well, no deal. The whole system just grinds to a halt.
So people tried to get around this, right? They started using commodities as a kind of early money. Things almost everyone found useful, like salt or cattle. But man, this came with its own set of huge headaches. I mean, can you imagine trying to buy something small with a cow? Or what if it rains and your salt money just dissolves? We definitely needed a better way.
And this is where things get really interesting. That need for a better system led to the first huge innovations in the story of money. We're talking about the invention of coins, and later on, paper.
You can really see how things evolved, right? We went from that clunky barter system to using common goods. But then, bam, a massive leap forward with standardized coins in ancient Lydia. And then, hundreds of years later, another game changer out of China, paper promises.
So what made coins such a revolution? Well, they basically fixed everything that was wrong before. They didn't spoil, you could actually carry them around, you could easily break them down into smaller amounts, and here's the most important part. They had a standard value that was guaranteed by a trusted stamp.
And yep, you guessed it, this brings us right back to that key idea, trust. See, the real value wasn't in the bit of gold or silver itself. The value was in the collective trust everyone had in the authority, the king, the government, that stamped that coin and promised it was worth something.
All right, hang on, because now we're going to hit the fast forward button and jump straight into the modern era. And this is where the story of money just goes into overdrive, and the pace of change is absolutely mind-blowing.
After World War II, the global economy desperately needed stability, and the US dollar kind of stepped up to be that anchor everyone could trust. Then, just a few years later in the 50s, credit cards show up and suddenly spending becomes frictionless, all of which leads us straight to today, where money isn't really a thing at all anymore.
I mean, just think about it. When you get paid, a briefcase of cash doesn't land on your doorstep, right? A number just changes on a screen. For almost all of us, for almost everything we do, money is just digital data flying around the globe at the speed of light. So with everything being digital, that sets the stage for the newest and maybe the most controversial chapter in this whole story. A chapter that forces us once again to ask a really fundamental question about that central idea of ours, trust.
Let's break down the key difference here. The money in your bank, that's controlled by central authorities. You know, banks and governments. They're in charge. But with cryptocurrencies, it's totally different. They're run by a massive distributed computer network. There is no single person or company or government acting as the boss.
So how on earth does that work without a boss? Well, it's thanks to a technology called blockchain. And the easiest way to think about it is like a giant, public, digital notary. When someone wants to make a transfer, it's announced to everyone on the network. The network itself has to check it and approve it. And once they do, it's locked into this permanent, public record that no one can secretly change. The trust isn't in a bank anymore. The trust is built into the code of the system itself. But look, this new world isn't perfect. You've got two sides to this new coin. Literally, on one side, the potential is incredible. We're talking about instant money transfers without needing a bank, money that can be programmed to do things automatically, and a system that's much harder for any one group to control or mess with. But on the other side, you've got some massive problems.
wild price swings, huge risks of fraud, and laws that are still struggling to catch up.
So, after all that, after this wild journey from bartering cows to digital code, what's the big takeaway? The real story here isn't just about money. It's the story of how our very idea of trust has changed over time.
Think about it. First, we trusted in physical things, in actual goods. Then we shifted our trust to the king's stamp on a piece of metal. From there, we learned to trust a bank's paper promise. Right now, we put our trust in these huge, complex digital systems. So the big question for our future is, can we learn to place our trust in decentralized code? Because in the end, the form of money is always changing. It's been seashells, salt, gold coins, paper, and now computer code. But the one thing at its heart, that shared belief that gives it any value at all, that part never ever changes.
The story of money is our story. It's one we are all actively writing, right now, with every transaction we make. And that leaves us with one final, really important question. As we start writing this next chapter together, what will we choose to build our trust on?